Let's be honest, half the fun of watching Antiques Roadshow is the fantasy. We all dream of digging through Grandma's attic and finding a dusty old painting that turns out to be a lost Rembrandt. We love the gasp, the wide eyes, and that heart-stopping moment when the expert reveals a number with a lot of zeros. We've seen people nearly faint over dirty glass rings that turn out to be priceless diamonds and thrift store bowls that are actually ancient artifacts. Those moments are electric. They're the thrill of the lottery, the ultimate "I told you so," all wrapped up in one tidy television segment. But every once in a while, a guest comes along who reminds us what the show is really about. It's not just about the price tag. It's about the story. It's about the hands that held the item, the lives it touched, and the history it carries. This is one of those stories. It's about a woman who brought in a simple piece of wood, something that was personally priceless to her, and learned that the rest of the world was finally catching up to what she already knew. And unlike so many others, she had absolutely zero intention of ever letting it go. A stick, a story, and a grandfather's legacy. When a woman stepped in front of the Antiques Roadshow cameras, she wasn't carrying a massive painting or a glittering piece of jewelry. She was holding a stick. To the untrained eye, it was just that, a piece of dark, carved wood. Interesting perhaps, but not the kind of thing you'd expect to cause a stir. But this guest wasn't there to cash in. She was there for a far more practical and touching reason. She needed an insurance valuation. This wasn't just any stick. It was a preaching stick that had belonged to her grandfather. As she began to share its history, the air began to change. The expert's eyes lit up. This was not just a family heirloom. It was a piece of profound American history, carved by a man whose hands didn't just create art. They shaped a community. The artist, it turns out, was none other than Elijah Pierce. If you don't know that name, you should. Pierce was a renowned powerhouse woodcarving artist, a self-taught genius whose work is now considered a vital reflection of African American culture, history, and faith. But he wasn't some isolated artist working in a sterile studio. According to his granddaughter, the guest on the show, he was also a barber and a preacher. Can you just picture that? Imagine a community barbershop, the hum of clippers, the scent of talcum powder, and the sound of stories being swapped. And there, in between clients, sat Elijah Pierce, whittling. He wasn't just cutting hair, he was chronicling the world around him, carving his beliefs, his memories, and his life into small figures and plaques. A biography carved in wood. The stick she brought to the show was the one he used while delivering his church sermons on Sundays. It was his visual aid, his touchstone. But it was more than that. It was also a reference tool he used to tell stories to his customers right there in his barbershop. The stick was, in essence, his life carved into wood. It featured images from his everyday world, a comb and a brush, symbols of his trade as a barber, and woven all around them was powerful iconography from the Christian faith that guided his life as a preacher. This single piece of wood was a diary, a sermon, and a work of art all in one. It was a direct, tangible link to her grandfather's voice, his hands, and his soul. The expert's astonishing verdict. The expert, Nancy Druckmann, was visibly moved. She didn't just see a piece of wood, she saw a narrative. It is a remarkable piece of African American art, Druckmann explained, handling the stick with the reverence it deserved. It speaks to his personal narrative and his religious fervor and spirit, so it's all kinds of present on this preaching stick. Druckmann went on to explain why this piece was so significant, not just to the guest, but to the art world at large. There is now an enormous interest in the artwork of self-taught African American artists, she said, because in this particular category, the expression and the intensity of what is depicted on these works of art is really central to the maker's being. This wasn't art made for a gallery. This was art that had to be made. It was a pure, unfiltered expression of a life lived. And then came the moment, the valuation. Druckmann revealed that if the stick were to go to auction, it could easily fetch $15,000 to $20,000. A collective gasp. That's life-changing money for a family heirloom. But the guest didn't flinch. She didn't celebrate. She just smiled, a look of quiet pride and validation on her face. Because remember, she wasn't there to sell. The real value, what you can't replace. This is where the story gets even better. The expert, sensing the guest's deep connection, gave her the real number she came for. The auction value is what someone would pay.